Okay, well, our last scheduled speaker is Dr. Jill Stein. She is the Green Party presidential candidate. She's here for the convention today. She's a medical doctor, teacher of internal medicine, advocate for human health and climate security, green economic revitalization, very important things. She's presented work at government, public health, and medical conferences, and her work has improved policy. She has successfully campaigned to mitigate mercury poisoning in Massachusetts and clean up the filthy 5 coal plants. That's huge. That's huge. She is a co-founder of the Massachusetts Coalition for Healthy Families, and we'd love to give a big welcome to Dr. Jill Stein.
You got it, yeah. It's time to shine, and maybe it's time for Stein. Exactly. It's time for us. It's time for women. It's time for our children. It's time for working people. It's time for the environment that our lives depend on. And it's time for good jobs at living wages with equal pay for women. It's time for all of those things. In fact, it's past time. Like Alice Walker. You've heard of her, right? Alice Walker. Oh, let's hear it for Alice Walker. Yeah. What did she say? I mean, she says amazing things. And one of the most important things she says is, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing they have it to start with. We've got it and we know it. We know it and we got it, and we really need it. We really need it now because we've been left behind by a political establishment that has delivered crisis after crisis for the everyday people, but has really delivered the goods for the top 1%, for the economic elite who's sponsoring both political parties. So they're making out like bandits, and we know that the top 1% has tripled. They have tripled their income. It's not just up a little bit, it's up threefold, while ordinary working people are struggling just to stay above the poverty level. Yeah, no good at all, because 1 out of every 2 Americans now is either in poverty or close to the poverty level. And that's 40% of single moms are struggling at the poverty level. Why? This wasn't an act of God or an act of nature. This was an act of the political establishment on both sides of the aisle that have allowed our wages to erode, to go down the drain. These so-called free trade agreements, which are free for big corporations, but they're not free for working people. And the White House just expanded those free trade agreements, which are going to send more jobs overseas and undermine the power of workers to defend living wages, to defend decent working conditions and safety on the job. And so many people had high hopes 4 years ago. We were going to see the Employee Free Choice Act. We were going to see a raise in the minimum wage. Did you know there's such a thing called the sub-minimum wage? Have you heard about that? Like you'd think it's for subhumans. You know, the sub-minimum wage for subhumans. Sub-minimum wage is for people who work for tips. Who's that? It's like people who wait on your table. That's a lot of women who are waiting on tables. And you know what they make? $2.13 an hour. Can you believe it? These are the kinds of policies that the political establishment has allowed to stay. They haven't given us employee free choice. They haven't raised the minimum wage. There's so much we can do. They're giving away the store to the top 1%, and they're telling us there's not enough money. But when they say there's not enough money for our reproductive health care, for our health care clinics, for homelessness prevention, for schools, for after-school programs, for cultural programs for our kids, they say there's not enough money. But what they mean really is there's not enough money for you, because there's plenty of money for wars and Wall Street bailouts and tax breaks for the wealthy. Yeah, we don't need that. We need some of those trillions of dollars, We're spending $1 trillion every year on this bloated military-industrial security complex. And it's not making us more secure, it's making us less secure. So we can bring the troops home and we can downsize the military and we could cut it in half and we would still have the biggest military budget in the world. If you cut it in half, that's $500 billion to put us back to work. And that's what my campaign is putting on the table. We want to end unemployment. End it. With living wage jobs for everyone who is willing and able to work. And these are jobs based in our communities. So these aren't big, big corporate multinational jobs that are going to hire you at minimum wages, because those are the jobs that are coming back right now. If you've been following this story, they're celebrating record profits at General Motors. But how is General Motors making those record profits? By lowering the wages of new workers who are coming in at about half the wages from before. So we're not seeing the work that needs to be done. Even when the Democratic Party had both houses of Congress, we didn't see movement forward. That's why it's time for us to stand up. It's time to say no to the politics of fear, which has told us for so long we've got to be afraid of ourselves. They've been telling us you gotta just vote for the lesser evil or terrible things would happen, like the expanding wars, which we've gotten in droves from this president. This has not been the peace president. One of his first acts was to intensify the bombing in Pakistan and then spread it to Yemen and to Somalia and then to surge the troops into Afghanistan. And the only reason the troops came out of Iraq was because George Bush had previously arranged that withdrawal date. We can do better. We need a peace president because we have a peace public here in America. It's time to have a president that reflects the aspirations of America. Because what does America want? We want good, secure jobs at living wages, jobs that make our communities stronger, not sicker. And one of the ways we do that is by creating these jobs in clean, renewable energy, in conservation. We could put 1 million people to work tomorrow on energy conservation and weatherizing our homes at good living wages. We could do that now. And we're calling for 25 million jobs to put everyone back to work and doing it in a way that creates food resources and healthy, organic food economies in our communities. You can't have a child go to school and expect to be able to educate that child when the child is fighting his or her way out of poverty and doesn't have access to healthy nutrition and clean air and a home and a job for his or her parents. This is what education is all about. It's about having a healthy community and a responsible community. It's not about high-stakes testing or teaching to the test. There are so many solutions here that are at our fingertips. We don't need rocket science. We need good jobs. We need health care as a human right. What is it with this? Let's hear it. It's about, we need Medicare for all. We all deserve health care. There shouldn't be a debate about your religion versus your health care. It's not a debate at all. We all have a right to health care. We all have a right to our religious beliefs, but those are separate. Everybody gets to make those choices. It shouldn't be your employer who's telling you what health care you can't have. And the president let us down here, not only by capitulating on the principle and striking a bargain with this idea, oh no, we're going to respect the religious preferences for your health care. It shouldn't be about anybody's religious preferences. And the president also let us down on Plan B. The FDA and all medical organizations said we needed Plan B, the morning after pill, that was important. It should be readily available to people. And he, for the first time in history, overrode the recommendation of the FDA. So we say, let's just fix it all in one fell swoop. Let's have health care as a human right through Medicare for all. It doesn't cost us money, it saves us money. Unintended pregnancies alone are costing us $11 billion a year across the U.S. $11 billion that we could be putting into our schools and our health care. We're also calling for free public higher education. It pays for itself. We know that from the GI Bill. For every dollar that we put into college education for returning soldiers after World War II, we got back $7 in returns on our investment. So this shouldn't be a question of if or when, it should just be done now. And while we're at it, we forgave the banks their debt. It's time to forgive the students their college debt. We came up with $16 trillion is what President Obama and his administration came up with for the banks. 16 trillion. Students are in debt 1 trillion. They didn't deserve it. They were putting their best foot forward and working their hardest. So we need to reward them for working hard. We need to reward their faith, and our economy needs them. We need their breath of fresh air and their new imagination. It's time to bail out the students. So, last thing I want to say is just in the spirit of Unite Women, in the spirit of this grassroots profusion of energy, this is what Alice Walker is talking about. This is that power that we have. And we don't have to just vote with our feet here today. We can also vote with our vote in the voting booth in November. And you do have a choice. You don't have to go in and pull the lever or punch the card for 4 more years of corporate rule. You don't have to do that. We can meet the politics of fear with the politics of courage. That's how women got the vote in the first place. There was a women's party. There was a small party that helped articulate the agenda, the vision, and the demands. Because as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, it never will. And part of what we're doing in the Green Party is bringing that demand. We are driving it into the political discourse. You are not throwing away your vote. You're throwing away your vote if you vote for more of the same. You're making your vote meaningful and powerful by standing up for what we're about. Whether we get 2% of the vote or 52% of the vote, it's a win either way because we drive the solutions into the public forum where they cannot be stopped. And we begin to build the base for taking back our democracy and turning this breaking point that we're at into a tipping point for our democracy and the peaceful, just, green future we all deserve. Thank you so much. Let's do it.